This Toyota Rav4 Prime is one of the most sought after Toyota models on sale today. But why is that? Why does this have a wait list that is 6 months to a year and a half long, maybe even longer? Why don't we go for a drive and find out? The Toyota Rav4 Prime is actually one of the more powerful vehicles that Toyota sells. It has a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine that's under the hood, and on its own it produces about 177 horsepower. But paired with it is a couple of electric motors in the front and one electric motor in the back. The ones in the front have a combined output of around 180 horsepower, and the one in the back is 53 horsepower. So when you do all the calculations and all the formulas and put all of those numbers together, you end up with a combined output of 302 horsepower. That's good enough to get this nearly 2-ton SUV up to 100 kilometers an hour or about 62 miles an hour in as little as 6 seconds, maybe even a smidge under 6 seconds. And you know what? From behind the steering wheel, it actually feels that fast. Even if you don't leave the car in auto hybrid mode, which is where you would get the full 302 horsepower, and you just drive it on electricity alone, every time that you put your foot down, the car actually accelerates with a good amount of pace. Thing is though, this platform doesn't feel like as though it was meant to handle this much power. Again, if you put the car into auto hybrid mode, which is the only way you're going to get that 302 horsepower, and you put your foot down hard, then you can actually feel the steering wheel tugging. It actually has torque steer. And unfortunately, this car does not get any better when you start to show it some corners. The steering is direct, which is good, but it doesn't really offer a whole lot of feedback. And if you go too hard into a corner, then it's just gonna understeer. These eco tires barely have any grip. But one of the biggest negatives that I've noticed with the driving dynamics of the Toyota Rav4 Prime has to do with the ABS system. It's just a little bit too sensitive. So I've had this happen twice to me now, where I'm going down a hill and it's a particularly bumpy road, and I'm applying the brakes, not riding the brakes because that'll just warp your rotors, but moderate brake applications to slow down. And when I do that and hit a particularly big bump, then I've noticed that the ABS system will just freak out and intervene. It is a little bit unsettling, but I haven't really noticed this happen in other vehicles, and I have driven down the same road in other vehicles, and again, it hasn't happened with those. But in this one, it does happen. However, on the back of this Toyota Rav4 Prime, there is no TRD or GR badges, so driving quickly around corners is not the whole point of it. The whole point of this car is actually to just commute daily in it. It excels at being stuck in gridlock traffic. The Rav4 Prime is rated for driving on electricity for up to 68 kilometers or 42 miles. However, I've noticed that after fully charging the battery, it says that it can go upwards of 75 kilometers. And some owners on Rav4 forums claim to be able to drive up to 80 kilometers or about 50 miles just on electricity. The top speed in EV mode is 135 kilometers an hour or about 85 miles an hour. The 18.1 kilowatt-hour battery can be recharged from a wall outlet or a level 2 charger. You'll be looking at up to 12 hours of charging time from a wall outlet and as little as 2.5 hours from the fastest level 2 charger. When the battery is depleted and the gasoline engine needs to take over, the Rav4 Prime behaves like a Rav4 hybrid. In hybrid mode, it is rated for 5.7 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 6.4 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. But if you consistently plug in the car every chance that you get, then the fuel economy numbers will become ridiculously low. During my time with the Rav4 Prime, I drove it for about 375 kilometers, which is roughly 230 miles, and my average fuel economy was just 2 liters per 100 kilometers. So if your commute is within 75 kilometers or so, you don't need to fill up the Rav4 Prime for weeks or even months on end. The 2022 Rav4 Prime is as comfortable as a Toyota crossover SUV should be. The suspension smooths out bumps and potholes in the road without giving you the feeling of being too floaty. The seats also provide an ample amount of comfort with no pressure points. However, the armrest on the door could use some more padding. While driving, the cabin of the Rav4 Prime is well insulated for this type of vehicle. Wind noise is negligible, engine noise is irrelevant when driving in EV mode, and road noise from the tires is kept in check. You will hear some of the mandatory EV pedestrian notification sound when driving below 35 kilometers an hour or 21 miles an hour, but that gets turned off as soon as you're above that speed. The only intruding sound that you'll hear is the agonizing drone of the engine if you push hard on that right pedal. With the Rav4 Prime having a larger battery than the Rav4 Hybrid or gasoline-only Rav4, the interior space has not been sacrificed for passengers. Front occupants have plenty of legroom and headroom, with the driver's seat providing enough adjustments. Rear occupants also have a generous amount of legroom and headroom. Behind my taller than average driving position, my knees brush up against the back of the front seat, but they're not squished. Headroom is also plentiful as there is a dip in the headliner behind the sunroof mechanism. In the trunk, the 2022 Toyota Rav4 Prime has a little bit less cargo capacity with the rear seats in their upright position than the Rav4 Hybrid. The Prime has 949 liters of space, with the Rav4 Hybrid offering about 100 liters or 3.5 cubic feet more cargo capacity. But with the rear seats folded, the Rav4 Prime has the same amount of cargo capacity at 1,976 liters. The 2022 Toyota Rav4 Prime has a starting MSRP of around $45,000 Canadian. This one is the XSE trim and it'll cost you around $51,500 Canadian. You can also add on the technology package, which costs $5,400 Canadian. In the United States, the equivalent package to that would be the premium package, and it costs about the same amount, only in American dollars, of course. However, if you want to get your hands on a Rav4 Prime right now, then lube up, bend over, and prepare to get railed, because dealerships and private sellers are asking an absurd amount of money for these. I've seen on Craigslist and AutoTrader a few used 2021s and a few new 2022s, mind you, very, very few. And some of them were asking around $75,000 Canadian for one of these. That's about $60,000 American if you do a direct conversion. Again, that's an absurd amount of money. But if you don't want to sell a kidney to afford one of these, then be prepared to wait 6 months to maybe a year and a half or maybe even longer until your order gets completed. Because unfortunately, Toyota just can't build these fast enough. For the price that this car was intended to be sold at, it has quite a lot of features. You get heated front and rear seats, heated steering wheel, sunroof, power liftgate, a 9-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Unfortunately, they're not wireless. There's a backup camera, but unfortunately it has a low resolution. There's also wireless phone charging, automatic climate control, push-button start, keyless entry, and a slew of advanced safety aids. If you upgrade to the XSE technology package, the Rav4 Prime gets equipped with a larger panoramic sunroof, ventilated front seats, a head-up display, surround view cameras, a premium audio system, satellite navigation, power passenger seat, and a hands-free power liftgate. The IIHS gave the 2022 Toyota Rav4 Prime a top safety pick plus, with the SUV receiving good scores in every category. It is equipped as standard with Toyota Safety Sense 2.0, which includes everything from automatic emergency braking to lane keep to blind spot sensors. The only option that can be added through the XSE technology package is rear emergency braking. So why is the Toyota Rav4 Prime such a sought-after vehicle? Well, first and foremost, it's a Toyota, so it'll probably last a really long time. It's also really fuel efficient, as you would expect from a plug-in hybrid. It's plenty spacious, it's got tons of gadgets and gizmos, it's got tons of power too, and it's pretty easy to drive. And also, it's pretty reasonably priced, from the factory that is. Like I said earlier in the video, if you want to get your hands on one of these right now, then be prepared to sell one of your kidneys or maybe sell a kid or something. Otherwise, you're going to be waiting 6 months to 2 years, maybe even longer, who knows. It's a shame that Toyota just can't make them fast enough. But anyway, if you want to know more about this 2022 Toyota Rav4 Prime, I wrote a more detailed review of it over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up here. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck or most likely another SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.